Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Comic Source Comic Boom collaboration Time for your DC Spotlight for the week of March 1st, 2022. Heading into our third month of the year. And I promise, guys, that the Comic Source Awards, the best of 2021 is coming. I know we're 3 months in, but it's coming. I promise you. Rocky and I have both been really busy, but it's coming. And it reminds me that, man, as we enter the third month, I have to do this year what I said I was going to do the last year and the year before that, which is make notes on the books as I read them. Part of the reason it took so long to get my picks for 2021 is because I had to go back through a year of books because I don't write things down like I should. Like, it's hard to remember a favorite cover or favorite moment. So as I read the comic and it's a cool moment, I need to make a note on my reading list to say, hey, when you go back through for your favorite moment of 2022, it'll be all right there. So anyway, on to the DC books that we're going to talk about this week. Let's see, we have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14 books, plus Dark Knights of Steel, The Gathering Storm #1, which is actually the first 3 issues all bound together in kind of a new volume, almost like a mini trade. So we're not going to go into that because we've already covered those 3, but we'll talk about the new issue. And of those 14 books, 2 of them we're going to do in a separate episode because it's War for Earth 3. We have the first issue of that and then the first tie-in, which is Suicide Squad #13. So if you're joining this specifically to talk about or hear about War for Earth 3, you don't care about anything else, go check out the other episode. So that being said, don't forget, everybody, because you demanded it, spoilers aplenty in this DC Spotlight. So overall, I have to say, as much as I try to stay positive, this was a little bit of a down week for me. There wasn't anything that I felt. I mean, even the return of Nice House on the Lake felt a little underwhelming to me. So I don't know. Nothing, outright terrible, maybe with the exception of one book that I really didn't care for. But most of it was just kind of average, I guess. What do you think, Rock?
Well, even though I really like the War for Earth 3. I love the opening issue because it's even tying a little bit somewhat with even though I was surprisingly tied in with Andy Schmidt's 6-issue miniseries a little bit because and we'll talk about that. But I was very pleasantly surprised with the War for Earth 3. I was quite happy with that, and I'm looking forward to reviewing that. Dark Knights of Steel threw me for a loop.
Yeah.
I'm still processing it, but I kind of like it, And Justice League Incarnate I enjoyed, and even Batman's Killing Time with Tom King is piquing my interest as well. But but I agree with you. Night House on the Lake, because Night House on the Lake #7, it just come off a long hiatus or 3 or 4 month hiatus. It feels a little bit underwhelming as well, but yeah, we'll get into it. But some interesting.
Yeah, I mean,
surprises.
not only coming off the hiatus, but coming off the reset button at the end of issue 6, which
That's right.
Yeah. So anyway, let's dive in. Only a couple issues left of Bendis's Justice League. This one that's out this week, Justice League #73, and then obviously 74, which will wrap up this story arc as well as his run right before Joshua Williamson takes us into the death of the Justice League in issue 75, which was hinted at actually when we get to Justice League Incarnate. We'll talk about that. So, yeah, it's not bad. I do find myself enjoying this this story arc more so than I've enjoyed some of the other stuff that Bendis has done in his Justice League run. I think maybe I'm attributing it to like the larger team, the fact that it's almost like a mashup of Justice League and Justice League Dark here. So I am enjoying it. Again, written by Brian Michael Bendis, as I mentioned. Art is by Simon Krasinski with Emmanuel Lupacchino. We talked about that last issue. Kind of same setup here. Whenever Justice League Dark is on the page and the focus is on them, Simon Krasinski does it. When it's the more traditional Justice League, we have Emmanuel Lupacchino. Wade Von Grobinger and Scott Hanna are on inks. Simon Krodansky does his own colors. Hi-Fi does the colors on the Lupacchino line work. Josh Reed is on letters. So yeah, I mean, this being the second part of the story arc, the middle issue here, I thought it was well done. I thought it was well paced. For once, I didn't feel that Bendis was overly expositional, or didn't feel necessarily like words were just on the page so that people could have a chance to say words just for the sake of saying them. The only thing, and it's a minor little nitpick, the only thing that bugged me about it was it seems as though Naomi may be the savior of the league here. And, you know, it a little bit reminds me of our complaint that we have like with Jeffrey Thorne when he writes John Stewart, Green Lantern. It comes across as a little fan fiction-y, you know, and I get that Naomi's an exciting character and she's new and she's hit really big very quickly, but I don't know, it doesn't feel earned in a lot of ways because we still know so little about her. We don't really even understand her power set yet. She's still so new, so it makes it feel a little tropey or a little bit of a stretch. It just lacks that. Oh yeah, I could see this happen. You know, what's the word of verisimilitude? Just
Yeah.
lacks. Yeah, yeah. But overall, like I said, I am enjoying the story. I think the Simon Krodansky art on kind of the Justice League Dark pages, the magical fighting is really cool looking. So yeah, I'm enjoying this. I think Bendis is going out on a high note on his Justice League run. Actually, what are your thoughts, Rock?
Well, in fairness, yeah, he's going out on a higher note. Mind you, he didn't really have to go very high to be higher than his previous notes,
Fair
but in
enough.
my
Fair
mind,
enough.
but I agree, it's a little bit better. I look, I can nitpick. I mean, the villain of this piece, Xanadoth, is actually, you know, a forgotten Lord of Chaos. It's almost as if Bendis got tired of trying to understand DC continuity, so he just said, "Screw it, I'll make up my own character," in order to get Naomi, another one of my new characters that I've created, off the playing field to have an adventure with this new villain I just created, and so in that way, that's the cynical side of me, and you sort of alluded to that. But at the same time, I will say that this is actually one of the most more coherent, more easy to follow storylines from Bendis, and I love all the players here, from Hippolyta to Zatanna to Madame Xanadu to Doctor Fate to the Black Adam. Black Adam's possessed by Xanadoth. All the players in here, I think. I mean, just when he's finally maybe starting to have a little bit of fun, or for the first time, I feel like he's not completely out of his element. His element maybe being more Marvel than DC, and now he's at the end of it, and but so be it. But I agree with you. I think that there was a lot of action here. This issue had a lot of double page spreads. I don't know if you noticed that, but unfortunately, those watching on YouTube here, we can only show one page at a time. The way the way the pages are crunched in between our heads, but a lot of double page spreads here, and Manuela Lapicino, her art, I really like her as an artist. I'm biased. I like a lot of these double page spreads are really nice. A lot of the action here, the colors pop off the page. So this is a visual feast of an issue, and it's an easy to follow storyline. I am curious to know what Xanadoth notices about Naomi. We know that Naomi's from another universe, obviously. That's really the only thing we know. We haven't even gotten volume 2 of Naomi's series yet, and that's going to be coming out this year. So now, is Xanadoth going to play a role in that? I don't think so, but it's obviously with Xanadoth disappearing and taking Naomi with her, we don't know exactly how that's going to resolve, but I have to admit, I am curious. And, you know, look, it is a little bit forced with Naomi, but she is a new character. I think, in fairness to Naomi, with the DC wonky storylines and continuity post death metal, we haven't really in a different editorial environment. We should have gotten the second volume of the Naomi series by now. We shouldn't have had to shoehorn her into the Justice League, but it is what it is. And I agree with you. This is definitely one of Bendis's better Justice League issues.
Yeah, I mean, in a perfect world, I think even Bendis and David Walker would have wanted more Naomi. Jamal Campbell's not the fastest artist, and to be honest, David Walker and Bendis have a lot of irons in the fire, especially Brian Michael Bendis, not only with his comics work, but he's got the Legion of Superheroes animated TV show. He's got other big projects that he's involved in. So it's just a matter of bandwidth. But yeah, I mean, back in the day when comics weren't such a thing, especially in terms of other media pulling attention away, yeah, we would have had way more Naomi. Like based on the success of that 6-issue mini, would have gone right into an ongoing, and we'd have like 30 issues by the 6-issue mini plus another couple years. It'd be like 30 issues. We definitely know who she was. So when we sort of complain like, well, maybe she hasn't earned it, it's not that may very well be the case, but in terms of timeline, in a different universe, maybe she would have earned it by now. So I mean, don't get me wrong, and I like her as a character. It's just I feel like we don't know enough yet.
Yeah, I agree. Well,
Yeah, go ahead.
in fairness to Bendis, I'm looking forward to Naomi Volume 2. I mean, say what you will, I've been very hard on Bendis, but I mean, Naomi is a very interesting character. I just wish we would have gotten far more of her, more of the time over the last year.
Yeah, I agree.
In her own series, like.
Anyway. So up next is Batman 121, and this is really interesting to me because it's already been announced. So they made it. It felt like they made kind of a big deal when Williamson was jumping on, but now we know that Chip Zdarsky's jumping on with issue 124. So I guess we're getting another 3-part story, not even a full arc, a 3-issue something with Williamson, and then in July, I think it's July, maybe June. That Zdarsky's taken over. So I find that really, really interesting. But be that as it may, Joshua Williamson is the writer on 121. It's the finale of the Abyss story. Jorge Molina and Mikel Yanin as the artists. Tomeu Morey does colors. Clayton Cowell on letters. How'd you feel this one wrapped up?
Well, I thought it was a little convenient. I thought it was very convenient. But, I mean, I love the art. It's fantastic. I actually liked the fact that it wrapped up a little bit conveniently because I didn't want this to drag on. I like the fact that it was a little bit convenient in that the Batman Incorporated, sort of the League of the Batmen, we thought that they had betrayed Batman, that they're working with Abyss, and that the big reveal at the end of last issue was that, oh my God, the Batman Incorporated, they're betraying Batman, they're working with Abyss, and they're now going to take out Batman and Lex Luthor having acquired Batman Incorporated. And there's a lot of revelations here, and perhaps the biggest one being somewhat conveniently is that, well, Batman Incorporated, they're all good guys. They're not compromised after all. Batman says a code word halfway through here, and they all betray Abyss. And this was part of a ploy, I guess, to sort of lure Abyss out. Batman Incorporated have been, even unbeknownst to Batman himself, the various members of Batman Incorporated have been sort of working on taking down Abyss for a while, and they've been sort of pretending to work with Lex Luthor. Lex Luthor apparently has had this elaborate game where Lex Luthor acquired Batman Incorporated and was going to various cities trying to recruit various heroes to work for him, and basically so he could control his own Batman Incorporated. And he had all these machinations. So Lex Luthor basically wanted to, a way of just getting control of things. And it's interesting. I made a comment last time when we reviewed the last issue of Batman 120. I wasn't sure how this maybe is consistent with the Rising, which is he's working with John Bendix of the Island Nation of Gomorrah, which is the
Henry
Rising.
Bendix.
What's that?
Henry Bendix.
Thank you. And it seems to me that maybe this does have something in common with that, because if they want to create a negative PR campaign against all the heroes of the world, against metahumans, for Lex Luthor to control Batman Incorporated in conjunction with that, maybe there is some synchronicity there. So this even lines up maybe a little bit with that. But I like this. I still love this new detective. Detective Kea is her name, I think it is.
Yep.
This Detective Kea might end up being a future member of Batman Incorporated. It's hinted at the end. In the meantime, Batman takes out Abyss. It's Williamson's Batman seems to be a little bit very powerful. Even blind, he seems to be a superior fighter. Lex Luthor was shocked to discover that Batman was actually blind. You've been blind all this time? It's like, yeah, that's Batman for you. And Bruce Wayne, Batman, very intelligent. He uses Lex's own tech to locate Abyss and essentially take Abyss out. And again, it's impressive stuff, and just the great relationship that Batman continues to have with Batman Incorporated. He's a little frustrated with him that they never told him what he was doing. But like they said to Batman, well, would you tell us that you were doing it if the role was reversed? And of course, there's a reason why they're all like Batman, or for Batman Incorporated, they all have their own egos and their own way of doing things. But they've learned from the best, and that's and the fact that they've sort of defeated the machinations of Abyss and managed to sabotage Lex Luthor's master plan is really, maybe shouldn't surprise us. When you go up against Batman Incorporated, you better know what you're doing. And even Lex Luthor seems to have been outwitted here. I liked it. I really enjoyed it. What do you think?
Yeah, I enjoyed it too. More for the overall aesthetic of the story than story beats themselves. Because I talked a little bit about how I sort of dislike the idea of Luthor as a hero, but Williamson did really kind of poo-poo that here, and so I did appreciate that. Although, after the Jeff Johns Forever Evil event, we got Lex Luthor in his armor, but Superman, version of it. And now we've seen him in a Batman version as well. But yeah, we weren't going down that path, which I appreciated, because it was sort of hinted at, and I was worried, and I talked about that. But yeah, right away with the Batman Incorporated flipping on Lex, with the way that Bruce Wayne, figured that out, and they even sort of knew that he knew in a way. Well, you're Batman, of course you knew, even though they do ask, well, how did you know? Well, you guys are better fighters than that. I could tell you were pulling your punches when you first attacked me. So I appreciated all that. But I do agree that it felt a little anticlimactic, only because Abyss really came across in the first couple of issues as really formidable. Like he was going to be a big challenge for Batman. And then in the end, like you said, Batman's able to fight him pretty to a standstill, even blind. And so in the end, he doesn't come across maybe as powerful as you would have thought. And then the whole idea of Batman being blind, and then, well, there's a slash across his emblem on his chest, and then he can see. Like, what?
Yeah.
I expected an actual resolution of why he couldn't see. It's not really explained. I mean, I can come up with my own ideas. Oh, Batman had something on his chest that he wasn't aware of that was powering the nanites that were implanted in his brain that was blocking his vision, whatever. But I shouldn't necessarily have to come up with my own explanation for that. So, yeah, just little things like that were kind of like, I don't know. But I wonder if, don't get me wrong, Joshua Williamson is doing a fantastic job on a lot of the stuff he's doing at DC, but he's doing a lot. So you just wonder, and this may be, and I'm just purely speculating here, this may be why Zdarsky came on Batman so quickly. Maybe Williamson just realized, hey, this is I've taken on a little too much. Let's hand it over to somebody else who, and don't get me wrong, I'm excited. Zdarsky is a fantastic writer and has only gotten better over the last couple of years. So I'm really excited to see what he's going to do. But I wonder, because at the end of the day, this final issue of this arc felt just the tiniest bit rushed. It felt like it could have gone on a little longer and had that final confrontation between Abyss and Batman be fleshed out a little more, instead of, a little conveniently resolved. But overall, I enjoyed it. And the other thing that's really interesting is we got, 3 epilogues here? 2? No, I guess 2 epilogues and then the backup.
Yeah.
The first one, I almost say it's 3, even though only 2 of them are called epilogues, because, Batman gets the call at the end, hey, there's something going on with Arkham Tower. Obviously, we know, with Detective Comics being weekly. And then the first epilogue, it's a time jump, right? And whatever has happened at Arkham Tower has happened. The captions, Gotham City after Arkham Tower, and Batman's talking to Oracle, and she mentions some of the things that have been going on, and how Batman's like, I know I have a hard time celebrating the win, and I'm working on that. So, what does that mean for him? I guess we'll have to see. But Ghostmaker does make an appearance, and we know he's been training Clown Hunter. So in the Batman 2022 annual, we're going to get a little more Ghostmaker and Clown Hunter. So see how that plays out. And then the second epilogue, which to me was even more interesting because we see Prometheus show up. And apparently he's working with Deathstroke. And we know Deathstroke is now the leader of the Secret Society of Supervillains. So how's that going to play out? Well, that part of the story is going to be continued in Shadow War Alpha, which is another semi-Batman Deathstroke event that's coming soon. So,
and we know that Batman has officially returned to Gotham after this issue. He's officially returned to Gotham, as is confirmed by Prometheus. That's what Prometheus tells Deathstroke. Deathstroke wants Batman preoccupied, while he wants Batman distracted while he prepares for war. Exactly what kind of war? Well, I guess we're not really sure yet. But Bruce Wayne is now back in Gotham City. And so it'll be interesting to see what happens moving forward. Because as you said, Joshua Williamson he's controlling a lot of moving parts in all these narratives.
Yeah, and a lot of why Batman needed to be out of Gotham was to so that Shadow War or Shadow of the Bat story could take place, the Arkham Tower story. So,
yeah.
And then the backup, it's Maps as Robin. I think if you like Maps, you're going to love it. If you don't, you don't have much invested like me, it's just kind of like whatever. It ended a little ambiguously as well. So, but for those that are big fans of Gotham Academy and of Carl Kerschel, who writes and draws and letters this with colors by Dave McKeag, you probably enjoyed it. For me, it was just kind of like, meh. I'm not invested in these characters at all. So it was just Batman tangential story for me. Anything to add, Rocky?
What I would add is I kind of wish, not even though Gotham Academy did not necessarily sell all that well. I really enjoyed it, and it's one of those comics that I really enjoyed, notwithstanding maybe the lower sales of it. But it's got great character work, and I love Maps, and I actually, I know that Teen Titans Academy doesn't necessarily have a lot of sales either, and it's been canceled. But I would have liked to have seen more character work in Teen Titans Academy, like I just saw in this backup feature over the last 4 issues of Maps. Just really getting to know this character, and I don't know about you, Jace, but I know that you're not necessarily you weren't a reader of Gotham Academy, but I mean, I thought this was good character work. I think Carl Kerschel does a good job here, and he takes the time to really takes his time crafting a narrative. And they're always character-driven stories, and that's what I like about this. This is, Maps after helping Batman with a serial killer, but it's the character work on Maps that makes this worth reading in my mind.
Yeah, I mean, Maps is a fan favorite character, and even though I'm not invested in the character at all, I can see why, just based on what we get of her here. So
yeah.
All right, up next, the final issue of Justice League Incarnate. At least the final issue for now. I don't know if they would ever bring it back, but issue 5 of 5 from writers Joshua Williamson and Dennis Culver. There's a lot of artists here. So we've got Andrew Brezen on pages 1 through 18 and 24 through 28, and then Jesus Morena on 19 through 23, and then 29 through 30. And then we've got Hi-Fi on colors, which does sort of unify these two pencilers. And then Tom Napolitano on letters. So this was pretty solid. It's sort of interesting to see Darkseid so overmatched by the Great Darkness,
Yeah.
but in a way exciting. What I also appreciated, and I almost wish that it had been done, was that we got somewhat of a lineup of the Justice League Incarnate when Dr. Multiverse kind of gives us these brief character descriptions of them. Because there's been a lot of characters that have come in and out of both the Justice League Incarnate as well as the Infinite Frontier miniseries. And they're multiversal versions of these characters, and so just these little blurbs that we get with a little description are so helpful, just to give some context to the story. But in speaking about the story, I mean, it certainly is very much set up. with Williamson sort of putting, okay, let me put everybody where I want them so that we can start, with while this continues into the death of the Justice League in issue 75 of that series. And then, of course, eventually going to go into the Dark Crisis, which has been announced. So, if you're thinking, hey, this is issue 505 of Justice League Incarnate, and so I'm going to get the end of the story, you're mistaken. Just like with Infinite Frontier, issue 6 of 6 with that miniseries, you shouldn't have expected the end. So we've talked about it. Rocky and I have talked about it before, where we really think that if this is all one long story, why do you keep relabeling it? You should have just called it all Infinite Frontier, or all Justice League Incarnate, or all Road to Dark Crisis, or whatever. Stop shifting it around and calling it different things. But again, it's a minor nitpick. Overall, I enjoyed this series. It was great to see this young female version of Flash, Avery. I absolutely love the new Doctor Multiverse character. I think her design is cool. Her look is really cool. I like her personality, especially love those issues where her and Calvin Ellis, that version of Superman, were supposedly on our Earth, and some relationship stuff going on, a little bit will they, won't they sort of thing. That was great. And ultimately, what happens here, and this is not a spoiler because it's been already teased and announced and whatever for Dark Crisis, that one of the main characters of Dark Crisis was going to be a character that showed up on Crisis in Infinite Earths, classic, DC, maybe the biggest, most impactful DC story of all time, Pariah, who was this character from one of the first Earths that got destroyed by the Anti-Monitor, that was like cursed to jump through time as the wave of antimatter, or jump across the multiverse, I should say, not jump through time, but jump across to different locations in the multiverse to witness Earths being erased and just experience that torment over and over and over. He's going to play a big role in Dark Crisis. And he was always more of a sympathetic character and not really outright evil, so to speak. But he shows up here with a much more kind of malevolent personality, which I'm curious about, because he's a character that I always enjoyed and felt like he should have been used more beyond Crisis, but never really was. So I'm not necessarily like, oh no, this isn't him, he's acting differently, because I mean, this is a guy that's been tortured for a long time, and so I could see him falling into, hey man, I just want my pain to end, I just want my trauma to end, I want to stop witnessing the death of universes and whatnot. So I'm going to be really curious to see. I hope that Williamson does him justice. And he looks. I think his design is great. The way George Perez designed him back in the day. If I had any wish, it would be that anytime he appears on the comic page, that George Perez be the one that draws him. Because when Perez drew him, he looked so. There's so much emotion in his face.
Yeah.
So all in all, this was solid, but I wouldn't say it was necessarily satisfying, because it's just another stepping stone in the big event that's coming, that's going to be Dark Crisis. So ultimately, a bit of a setup series. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. This was definitely set up again. I'm excited for it. I'm really excited. Seeing Pariah at the end. Pariah, it's strongly hinted here, is the big bad. Pariah appears to be more powerful than Darkseid, more powerful than the Empty Hand. He's really controlling the Great Darkness. He seems to have a lot of power here. At least it's implied, it's suggested. It's also hinted at in some interviews that Williamson has given. Joshua Williamson has always asked, he's in interviews, he's talked about how he's always wondered in the past, he's always wanted to write about Pariah, like whatever happened to Pariah. There's a couple of, Pariah was always that character that showed up before, in the original Crisis, Pariah always showed up and warned each of the doomed universes that you're about to be destroyed, and he had to bear witness to the destruction, and he was a very tragic character, as you very aptly pointed out. But here he's become the villain. So he's the hero that's become the villain. So what happened? And so we're naturally, that story is likely going to play itself out. what happens in this issue is flowing from last issue. Darkseid fights the Empty Hand, and the Empty Hand taunts him by saying, come into the Great Darkness. Darkseid, you've always wanted to control the Great Darkness. Come on in. He taunts him, and Darkseid follows suit, follows the Empty Hand right into the Great Darkness, and it's basically what it looks like. Apparently, it's a trap. Meanwhile, the other people on Earth 7, like Grail and Orion, suddenly they think Darkseid is either dead or taken off the playing field, swallowed by the Great Darkness. Orion then becomes the new he's Orion, the son of Darkseid, under the right of succession. He becomes the new, I guess, Lord Ruler of Apocalypse and the Apocalyptic forces. And Grail points that out to him. Now, Grail is the daughter of Darkseid. If I have one issue here, I don't think that Grail. I think Grail would. I mean, Grail right away seems to side with Orion and say, you're my leader now. You're the son, right of succession. I see Grail. I don't think Grail would. I think Grail would fight Orion for that right to be leader of Apocalypse, but that never happened here. I disagree with Williamson's characterization of Grail. I think Grail's part Amazon, as well as she's part Amazon as well as being the daughter of Darkseid, so I see her as being more aggressive that way. But in any event, that's my minor little nitpick. Orion becomes the leader of the forces of Apocalypse, and he's got Grail under him, and he doesn't really want to do that, but it's happening. So instead of Darkseid it's Orion is. Meanwhile, the Thunderer, one of the members of the I guess you could say the Avengers of Earth 7, uses his world storm to destroy Earth 7 and contain the Great Darkness, while the Justice League Incarnate, Calvin, Dr. Universe, Avery, etc., they end up going into the Great Darkness themselves, and they end up in this world where the Pariah lives, and right away Dr. Universe senses that there's something evil about Pariah. And she says, you can't let Pariah touch you. You can't let him touch you. We got to get out of here. And it's a world where there's an artistic change as well. And it looks like an idyllic world. The coloring is different. It almost looks like a Silver Age kind of DC world, which is very, I think, reminiscent of the type of comic books, the way DC comic books were drawn in many ways of the Silver Age. A sort of innocent, sort of like, innocent, sort of like 1960s, early 70s look to the yards and to the feel, and very much probably like the world that Pariah lost back during the original Crisis. So I think all this art and everything that Williams has done has been very intentional, and this is very rewarding for a longtime reader like me who's familiar with all the crises. All these things are deliberate, intentional choices, and if you're familiar with the crises, I think that one can be even more rewarded by what the visuals are telling us. And I mean, that final page showing all the elements of the Great Darkness, and this is the buildup. The next issue is Justice League 75. So what happens after this is Justice League 75, which is, again, really no spoilers. We know it's going to be the death of the Justice League. It's everywhere. But to see, we got Darkseid, Eclipso, Ares, Necron, Doomsday, the Empty Hand. Yes, I'm missing one, I'm sure. Neuron. I mean, all these forces, and with the power of the Great Darkness, battling the Justice League. So, yeah, this is a lot of fun. I'm just as a DC fan, I'm loving this, and I'm looking forward to Justice League 75. And just for what it's worth, I got to quickly add, Williamson says, everyone, this Justice League 75, Justice League 75 is just one more chapter. And there's a lot more coming after Justice League 75. Justice League 75 takes the Justice League off the playing field, but all the mainstream titles, Superman, Flash, all of them, they're still going to have their individual stories. So they're not taken off the playing field in their own individual stories. There's going to be Justice League, there's going to be Death of Justice League tie-ins for each of the individual heroes. So the way that DC editorial appears to be handling their continuity is, even though Justice League 75 will technically kill off the Justice League, we're still going to be getting Philip Kennedy Johnson's full story of Superman in Action Comics. We're still going to have Jeremy Adams' Flash play out, and it's gonna at some point in the future, those titles are going to build into Justice League 75, which we're going to see in advance. So I think that I think they've done enough planning here. I think it's an exciting time for DC. I don't know about you, but I think there's some excitement building inside me. I'm really looking forward to this, and I hope it catches on to more of a mainstream audience, not just a diehard like myself.
Yeah, the continuity. You're right. I mean, it's not going to line up. I mean, it'll make sense eventually, but that goes to what I've talked about before, where I don't feel like, and I have mixed feelings, and I've said that before as well, because I don't necessarily want to have to buy the entire line in order to get the Dark Crisis storyline. But if this is affecting everything, then it should be. They should all line up, but they don't, because want to let those other creators tell the stories they want. So yeah, but you're right about that final page too. I think Black Hand. I don't know that you mentioned him, and then we have the Upside Down Man as well.
That's
But
right. Yes.
every one of those characters, I mean, the coloring on it, these are dark characters. Ares, very dark. Doomsday, obviously dark. Neron, the DC's version of the devil, or Mephisto, very dark. Eclipso, I mean, it's right there in the name, Eclipse, right? So yeah, these are dark characters, and teaming them up with Darkseid. I mean, that's going to be formidable, and it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. You said one thing I'm not sure that I buy into, and that's that Pariah is going to be the big bad. It does seem like he's wielding the power of the Great Darkness, but I don't know that. Is he more of a puppet of the Great Darkness, or is he? I'm not sure who's higher in the hierarchy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Is it Pariah that's managed to somehow wield the power of the Great Darkness, or is it the Great Darkness influencing Pariah? So it'll
You
be
could be
interesting
right.
to
You
see.
absolutely could be right. Yeah.
Yeah. Is it the Great Darkness that we would consider the big bad, or is it Pariah? I guess it remains to be seen. So. All right. Up next, we have Dark Knights of Steel #5. Wow, the ending of this one, just crazy. I don't know that I agree with it, especially because I reread the first 3 issues. Because, as I mentioned, there is a collection of the first 3 issues called Dark Knights of Steel: Gathering Storm that's coming out this week as well, and I read that just to kind of refresh myself, and then I read this, and it was like, I don't know that the events that Rocky, I'm sure, will share with you in a minute will really make sense. But be that as it may, written by Tom Taylor, art is by Yasmin Putri, colors by Arif Prianto, letters by Wes Abbott. Yeah, what were your thoughts, Rock?
Well, like I say, this particular issue is called Lost Souls, and I think by the time we're done talking about it, I think it's an appropriate title for this particular issue, Lost Souls, because there's definitely one soul that appears to be lost here, and wow, the revelation at the end, like boy, it's in fact calling the first 3 issues a Gathering Storm and collecting those first 3 issues and calling it a Gathering Storm. That's appropriate because this 4th issue, the storm hits because it's a storm of revelation that is going to set the tone moving forward. And wow, does it ever. This issue opens up with Zala, the sister of Kal-El, of Prince Kal, basically finally making it back to her homeland. And we believe that Zala is responsible for killing the son of King Pierce. And apparently she's not. She doesn't know what no one's talking about. She can't believe she's been accused of that. And so if Zala, who was it? If Zala didn't, it certainly looked like Zala who was responsible for killing King Pierce as well as killing his son Jacob. And she has a good heartfelt moment with her brother Prince Kal. Meanwhile, a good bulk of the issue for Harley and Poison Ivy fans. There's Harley Quinn enters the forest where there's poison with Poison Ivy, and Poison Ivy is this particular Poison Ivy is a creature of the forest and clearly has a fascination and a love for the Harley character, which of course shouldn't surprise anyone, but it's very clearly there's an attraction, at least by Poison Ivy, toward Harley. It wasn't clear to me that attraction was reciprocated by Harley here, so it's kind of interesting. I wonder if I'm really curious to see how Tom Taylor's going to move this relationship between this iteration of Harley and Poison Ivy forward. But I think it's very interesting. The art is fantastic. I love this issue. Wonder Woman makes her way through the forest, and there's a great battle sequence between Poison Ivy and Wonder Woman, which is broken up essentially by Harley. She lets them know that Zala, we know that Wonder Woman and I guess the Supergirl Zala, they have a relationship with each other. So clearly, there's a lot of same sex representation in this series, and I think it works. It works fantastic, and I'm really curious to know. There's Zala. Diana tells Zala that people are thinking you killed King Pearson. She's like shocked by this. Meanwhile, we know Alfred told Bruce Wayne that he's really the half brother of Cal, and that Jor-El was his father, and and he's got the piece of kryptonite that he from the fallen starship from the skies, and he goes and he tells Cal all about it, and he didn't want he doesn't want his brother to know. He wants him to know that we're half brothers, and he's thinking that you need to know this, and then out of the blue, wow, um, just when you least expect it, and the way it's choreographed here, you know, uh, Batman says, I didn't want you to feel shame, or for you to that I'm that he's also Jor-El is also my father, and then Kal-El out of the blue stabs his brother, his half brother, with the kryptonite, and takes him up to the sky. And it's clear that all this time it would appear that Cal's been the villain all along, waiting for his parents to die. Perhaps even was the machinations behind it all. Is Cal responsible for the assassination of his own father at the hands of the Green Man who shot the arrow? He utilized Oliver Queen to shoot the arrow into the eye of his father. He's responsible for everything. And is Cal responsible? I mean, I thought we had Lex Luthor. We thought this Lex Luthor slash Joker hybrid was the true villain behind everything. But is the true villain really Cal? It's heartbreaking. And then a twist on everything at the end. He leaves Batman for dead. And it's found by, I guess, the version of Jonathan and Martha Kent find a dying Bruce Wayne with a kryptonite shard shoved in his chest, and it would appear that Kal-El likely thinks that his half brother is dead, but he's not. And wow, just plain wow! This was a huge shock, and it'll be interesting to hear your comments, because I'm not sure. I'm still processing this. I'm not sure if I'm excited, yet at the same time I'm thinking, well, didn't he make Superman the villain in Injustice? And isn't this kind of the same thing, but in medieval times? And maybe I was hoping for a little bit of something different, but yet this does feel different. I mean, even though Superman might be the villain here, this feels very different to me than Injustice. It's a very different setting, and so I'm still excited, and I have a sneaking suspicion that the misdirections aren't over yet. And who the hell knows? Maybe there's more to this than meets the eye. So I'm really curious about your thoughts, Jace. What do you think of it?
Well, I mean, it did come as a shock, and that's okay to surprise us and give us a twist that wasn't expected. Does this mean that Cal's working with the Green Man? I didn't necessarily get that. I sort of got that he seems to be on his own side and just taking advantage of circumstances.
Maybe. Yeah.
But it also felt out of character for what we've had so far. And I thought, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there were clues in the early issues that I missed. And that's also part of the reason that I went ahead and read the Gathering Storm, collected those first 3 issues, because I was like, well, maybe if I go back and read those, I'll find some hints that this was coming. I didn't see them there. And so, I can't help but wonder if that this wasn't really, to go back to something we complained about with Naomi, if this wasn't really earned, because this came out of the blue and was unexpected. And maybe that's what Taylor wants to do. He wants to blindside us with something. But I don't know. Coming on the heels of Bruce admitting to Cal that he's Jor-El's son as well, it felt very petty, and it didn't feel like Cal. And I know that I tend to be a little more overly sensitive in depictions of Superman doing things that I don't feel are consistent with the character. So that didn't really sit that well with me. But maybe I was willing to wait and see what happened and be willing to buy into it. But then on top of that, with Bruce being taken way up in the sky and then dropped into a field and found by Jonathan Kent and Martha Kent, who we know are the ones that instilled such a sense of morality in Superman. But them finding Batman, it seems like the hint being that, okay, well, now Batman's going to end up being the savior. And I don't know if you read the thread between Dark Knight Nation and I today and, on our group Twitter. Oh my God, are you kidding me? Batman is going to be the big savior of this. I am so sick of Batman being the end all be all at DC Comics. Like I can get with this idea of, Superman, this version of Kal-El, not having had that influence of Jonathan and Martha Kent to instill a sense of morality. He's never had to really fight for anything. When basically since he can remember, his parents were, king and queen of this kingdom and what have you. But there still should be something inherent in Superman. We see it in things like Red Sun, right, where he wasn't found by Jonathan and Martha Kent. Things like The Nail, where eventually his own morality, his own strength of character wins out. And that still could be the case here. But I'd be lying if I said I wasn't a little worried, and especially seeing Martha Kent and Jonathan Kent save Bruce, and they're going to go nurse him back to health or whatnot. And he's going to be the big savior, and Superman will end up being the villain. I wouldn't say it'll ruin the story for me, but it won't make this, something that I would go back and revisit. So, maybe it'll be for some people and it just won't end up being for me. I do agree that the art's fantastic. I absolutely loved the scenes with Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy. That was fantastic. This version of Poison Ivy, like her as a court jester, I mean, it's super on. I mean, that's where her costume and her name comes from, in a lot of ways. Yeah. But I love that Taylor doesn't just give us this goofy or crazy court jester version of Harley Quinn. She's clearly intelligent. And I like that. So, as far as, is it Zala is her name, right?
Zala, Zala.
Yeah. Again, having gone back and read those first 3 issues, because I'm like, what? Did it not look like her? I went back and read those first 3 issues. It looks exactly like her. Yeah. So obviously, there's magic in this world, and so it could be somebody disguised as her, but it sure the hell looks exactly like her. So again, if this is Tom Taylor and he's going to pull the rug out from under us, I don't mind that necessarily, but I also like if there's at least a little hint or a little clue that maybe goes right over your head when you read it the first time, but when you go back, you can go, oh yeah, I see it now. And there wasn't any of that.
Well, there might be one little bit of a clue, although it's very subtle. When he has Batman up in the sky, he says to him before he drops him on the ground, he says there can be no challengers. We have to remember that in earlier issues, Cal was remember they imprisoned all the other medieval versions of the Justice League are actually imprisoned. They're actually prisoners in the land of El.
I didn't take that.
And so and the one that seemed most adamant about keeping them in prison was Cal. And he did mention that more than once. Now, his father likely did as well, but it wasn't really touched upon. So, because it was an open question, and we've not gotten the answer until now. We know what was the threat of all these other metahumans that they had to put them away? Like, what was the threat? Clearly, I mean, King Jor-El never really came across as someone that, did he really feel that they were threats? I'm wondering if that was all just a machination of his son, Cal.
No, I didn't take it that way. I did not take it that way at all. I took that there can be no challengers based on the fact that Bruce just told him, I am also your father's son. I took that to be, there could be no challengers for the throne. Like it's got to be pure blood, House of El as the ruler. He can't allow Bruce to remain alive. If somebody were to find out that Bruce was Jor-El's son, then he could technically, they're half brothers. So Bruce technically has a claim to the throne. So that's what I took it as.
You got to wonder if Zala is also on the kill list as well, his own sister.
Right. And again, when I say there's no clues, I'm talking about before this. Before this issue, there was no hints that Kal-El could possibly be the bad guy. Before this issue, when Zala kills Jacob, there's no hints in that issue when those events take place that it's not Zala. That's what I'm talking about. Give me a little something that I can go back and look and be like, oh yeah, look at how subtle that is. Maybe it wasn't really her. Look at something that Kal-El said early in the series where it hinted that he was going to do this heel turn. Maybe there are, things in this particular issue when the events happen like that, there can be no challengers. But again, I did not take it that way. I took that they were imprisoning people because they are vulnerable to magic. And so anybody who comes into the kingdom that has magical powers, they're paranoid. They lost their world. They've come to a medieval version of our world where, humanity is not as connected as it will be, like later in our time, because it's a medieval world. It's part of the culture, part of the society, because of it's not a technologically advanced world. So, but yeah, remains to be seen how much this will all play out. Was it Zala? Was it not? Will Kal-El kill Zala? Is she on the kill list as well? Like Rocky said, a lot of questions to still be answered. Which goes back to something we said before and several times. This is only a 12-issue mini. We're on issue 5. It feels like there's like 24 issues worth of story that still need to be explored, but I guess we'll have to wait and see. Okay, up next, Detective Comics number 1055. This is from writer Mariko Tamaki. Amin K. Nahalapan, who's now the third artist we've had on this arc, handles the line work. Jordi Belair on colors. Ariana Mayer on letters. We're up to the day. We're now on the day where Dr. Weir dies. The day that the series started on. I think it's day 24 of Arkham Tower. We're told Batman's still missing. We see Dr. Chase Meridian in prison. We see Weir go out the window. We see Dick Grayson rescuing or attempting to rescue Psycho Pirate, or I shouldn't say rescue, but extract him from Arkham Tower. So yeah, the inmates are literally running the prison. The shit is hitting the fan. A lot of action here. But I would say artistically, with it's not close. This is my least favorite issue. And I don't necessarily want to point the finger at the line work of Amin K. Nahalapan, but it's that line work in addition with the colors. For some reason, Jordi Belair colors this issue so much darker than all the previous issues. And I don't necessarily feel like Amin K's colors or line work rather need to be this dark, but it's jarring to me how much darker this is than previous issues. I don't know if she's trying to add menace or whatever. I mean, Jordi Belair is a super talented color artist. So yeah, that bothered me a little bit, how dark the colors were. But it was super breakneck pace with Nightwing, unfortunately, not making it out of the tower. Obviously, Mayor Nakano is completely preoccupied with his wife being trapped in the tower as well. So how that's all going to play out, we'll have to wait and see. And then we get the reveal at the end that Scarecrow is back with his. What is it about DC where when somebody decides to kind of level up a Bat villain, they've got to shove them down our throat like nonstop? I don't get it. Like,
Well, I thought he
first
was incarcerated. Like, where did Scarecrow come from?
Yeah.
Was he like? I thought he was in a different prison, but I guess he was in Arkham Tower too. It just this. I mean, it's just insane already. I mean, come on, like.
Yeah. Well, and he's not. I don't know. It happened with Joker, and Joker's been shoved down our throats for the last 2 decades now. It happened with the Riddler when he got leveled up by Scott Snyder in Batman Year Zero, and now it's happened with Scarecrow, with this new design that James Tynion came up with, and his whole idea of fear as, a way to evolve cities and whatever. And it's just like, man, I hate his look. I really don't like the new design. I don't understand the constant need to push the envelope with these. with these villains, just let the villains be who they are. Like I get it. You've and this is the problem we've talked about many, many times about how every writer tries to one up in terms of making Batman cooler and more powerful. So then in turn you have to make the villains more powerful, and they end up as these plot devices instead of actual characters. And that's on top of, your point of, it wasn't, I mean, Batman took him. We saw it in First State Omega. Batman
Yeah.
took him to Blackgate and
Yeah.
put him there. And here he is with his stupid straw hat and his stupid gas mask with the giant nose, showing up again. It's like, man, this is about the last Batman villain. The only way this could have been worse had it been the Joker. I even would have accepted the Riddler more so than Scarecrow. I am scarecrowed out. I'll tell you what. So I don't know. I question that choice by Mariko Tamaki, and I question whether it was needed, because this was going along great with just Psycho Pirate and Dr. Ware's Con. Like, that was fine. There's enough menace with all of these inmates, would-be inmates of Arkham Asylum that are now, free of Psycho Pirate's control. That's a menace enough. Now you got to, I mean, I just question the need to throw Scarecrow in there, but
I agree with you.
I'm reserving judgment because, he shows up right at the end, and maybe it's going to make sense. But I mean, next issue, State of Fear, like, I was glad Fear State ended. I think you and I both were. Now we're getting sucked back in a way. So
yeah, I really like Anna Volshin, and I like Nero. I was kind of hoping Anna Volshin and Nero here, they know once they kill Dr. Ware, Anna Volshin and Nero, they're both aware that that there was another voice in their head, that somebody else is in control, and so they're looking for Psycho Pirate. And I kind of like I was the most interesting character in this arc was Anna Volshin. Anna Volshin and Nero are very interesting characters. One of the things that I'm going to take out of this Tower series, this Tower story arc, is Nero and Anna Volshin. I actually like these. I'm actually curious. I think they're more of they're an interesting addition to Batman's rogues. And I didn't need the Scarecrow to show up. I agree with you. Why do we need Scarecrow to show up wanting revenge? It just seemed revenge. Well, I guess he's always pissed off at the people of Gotham. Revenge against whom? I mean, why not let Anna Volshin and the inmates have their revenge? They're the ones that have their revenge. To me, we haven't seen Scarecrow this entire series. We saw these other inmates. The most logical people who should want revenge are the inmates who've been psychologically manipulated by Psycho Pirate. To have Scarecrow show up and rob them of their agency and their revenge, when he hasn't formed part of this story after we've just been drowned with Fear State, and now it feels very, very disappointing, because I've been enjoying this story arc, and I was disappointed with this revelation, this final page. I've been enjoying this. It's 9 parts, but I've been having fun. It's an adrenaline rush, and I've been probably enjoying it more than most. But this disappoints me. Seeing Scarecrow, maybe this is an hallucination. Who knows? But I don't think so, because Psycho Pirate, he's elsewhere in here. He's actually in front of Dr. or Mayor Nagano's wife. He's with her. So it's going to be interesting to see what role Psycho Pirate plays. And now, in fairness, I have to say, who would win in a battle of the mind? You're going to have Scarecrow's fear gas versus the hallucinations of Psycho Pirate, or the mental manipulations of Psycho Pirate, versus the fear of Scarecrow. So that might make for an interesting sort of battle if that's where this is headed. But in any event, we'll see. I mean, it's not. I mean, hey, Marika Tamaki, the ending might surprise me. But like you, I think Scarecrow it's a redundancy that we're getting far too soon out of Fear State.
Yeah, and don't forget there's Mr. Freeze as well. So it's not like we needed, it just felt so unnecessary.
Yeah.
Like, we just got a ton of, it definitely feels like, again, a trope that DC falls into, where they just like overuse a bat villain. Like his rogues gallery is so deep, and as much as I like Tom King, like his whole entire run, nearly 100 issues, is all Bane. Like, man, give us some variety. It felt like in the 90s, when I like really what I consider my heyday of Batman reading, when I enjoyed it the most. Yeah, every arc it was somebody different. It was the KG Beast, and then it was the Mad Hatter, and then it was Black Mask, and then it was the Riddler, and now it just they give us one and they beat us over the head with it until we're sick of them. It's unfortunate. So, all right, well, we do have the backup, which we found out last issue is sort of set in the during the Nightfall era, or at least last issue was. So this time, House of Gotham, Chapter 9, by writer Matthew Rosenberg, Fernando Blanco as artist, Jordi Bolero on colors, Rob Lee on letters. We've quickly gone from Nightfall now to No Man's Land. And this boy whose name we still don't know, who survived the attack by Asbats and learning to walk again, and is actually in rehab when No Man's Land happens, and then is out trying to survive. And we do get a sense that for all his trauma and what he's been through in life, he's pretty capable, and he can stand up for himself. We see him stand up to this. Well, first of all, Killer Croc, for one, and then this other guy who's sort of in charge of the camp where he stays, named
the Poet. The
yeah.
Poet, he calls himself.
Yeah. So, again, this is building a very interesting story by Rosenberg. It's like, I want to know who this kid is so badly, but he's telling a compelling story despite that part of it. And what I mean by that is, like, if all I can compare it to is the whole Red X mystery in Teen Titans, and how that has become annoying because it feels like it's the only interesting thing about the character is the mystery of who it is. And so when that gets dragged out, it just becomes kind of like, well, there's no other hook. There's nothing else interesting about the character other than who he is, and I want to know who it is, but you keep dragging it out. This kid and the story Rosenberg is telling is interesting in its own right. And the fact that we don't know who he is or what the significance of his identity is not the end all be all of the story. He's crafting an interesting story that stands on its own. If we had gotten the information about who exactly this kid is right at the beginning, and he tells the same story, I think it's just as interesting. It may even be more interesting once we find out who he is and go back and do a reread with that knowledge of knowing who he is. So it's a difference between using that idea of a hook, of a mystery, of something inherently unknown about the character as something to enhance the character rather than something that defines the character. So I think that this is fascinating. And yeah, I mean, I think Matthew Rosenberg doesn't get enough credit for what he's doing. I haven't heard anybody talking about this backup. Is anybody even reviewing it except us? I don't know. It's fantastic.
I know, and this is 9 parts. This is a character arc in 9 parts on this kid, and I'm trying to remember the last time I've read 9 chapters of anything, and we don't know who the main character is. I mean, I can't think of the last time that's ever happened. So kudos to Matthew Rosenberg here. This kid is really, he's a survivor. And this kid has made mistakes. He's screwed up. He was screwed up to begin with. He was evaluated by Dr. Harleen Quinzel in the opening chapter. He had a trauma, that was largely attributed to Batman. A lot of the traumas that he's had in his life are somehow Batman related, whether it's the mainstream Batman or whether it's the Azrael as Batman during the Nightfall, and now we have No Man's Land. And he actually befriends Killer Croc. He actually makes a deal with Killer Croc, because they're looking for food. This kid knows how to make friends. This kid actually has loyalty. So we thought this kid was screwed up, but he actually knows how to maintain friendships. He actually has a sense of honor about him. So it's not just that he's screwed up. He actually has a good noble side about him, and he's not afraid to make deals. I mean, he makes a deal with Killer Croc here that they'll work together to give, in regard to food and supplies. And it's clear at the end here that the deal he makes is likely to sacrifice this bully. The Poet is probably going to, Killer Croc is probably going to kill him. That's hinted at on the final page. And this is all during No Man's Land. This kid's a survivor. Now, who does this kid become? Because you got to remember, out of no man's land, when Gotham became recovered from no man's land, and if this kid rose in the ranks during no man's land, who is this kid now? Now that Gotham is a vibrant city again after 10 years later? I mean, it's really really curious. Who is this kid? And you're absolutely right. And there's the speculator side of me is thinking all these people that weren't paying attention to this backup. Who cares about Arkham Tower? Who is this redhead? Who's this redheaded
Yeah.
stepchild?
Yeah, and I do wonder about that timeline. I mean, obviously it's comic book time, but
Yeah.
I looked it up because I was like, man, it doesn't seem like No Man's Land was that close to Nightfall. It was 5 years. Like Nightfall happened 93, 94.
Yeah.
And then No Man's Land started in 1999. So that's 5 years. And this is like the kid gets hurt, and then the next issue he's being rehabilitated. Obviously, not that much time has passed. Comic book time, I don't mind the sliding thing. Rosenberg makes it work. So yeah, we'll see. All right, well, let's move on to the next book, Monkey Prince #2, Enter the Monkey, Part 2 of 4, from writer Jean Luen Yang. Bernard Chang handles the line work, Sebastian Cheng on colors, Janice Chiang on letters. So it's an all-Asian creative team here. Yang, Chang, Cheng, and Chiang, and Jessica Chen on as the editor. So it's definitely steeped in Asian lore, and these people would be the ones that know. I wasn't a huge fan of the first issue. I don't remember if you liked it or not, to be honest, Rocky. But what did you think of issue 2?
Well, I don't think that this comic's for me. This is just so weird. It's one of those things where I don't. It's not that it's a bad comic. It's just that it's so weird to me. It's just weird. I just don't have. I just don't care about a kid that turns into a monkey. I don't get it. I understand, and I've never heard of the Monkey Prince, and I know he's got a big history in Japan or wherever it might be, but I just don't. I don't really get it. But in any event, let's be fair here. Let's be fair. So. There's some comedy here. I mean, it's Batman and Robin taking on this Monkey Prince. There's a serial killer that's in Gotham, and meanwhile there's this kid whose parents, Mr. and Mrs. Shugelshen, they're actually parents that work for the Penguin. They've worked for various rogues galleries, and they're basically criminals. And meanwhile, unbeknownst to them, their son has access to the power of the Monkey Prince. And then there's this talking pig that somehow was given him this mythological power. Every time that as the Monkey Prince, if he succumbs to fear, he resorts to his human form, and he'll die. While he's the Monkey Prince, he can lose all his limbs, he can lose his head, his arms, anything. But if he gives into fear, and he'll go back into his human form, and then he'll die. Obviously, if he's missing his head. Now, obviously, Batman and Robin, especially Batman, there's some humor here. Batman's almost a little bit embarrassed that they're fighting this monkey without a head, and it's really odd. And yeah, it's crazy. This professor, this Damien actually goes to the same school. Damien is undercover as a reporter for the school newspaper, and he interviews this. I can't even remember I don't even, what's the kid's name again? I don't even know the Monkey Prince's actual identity. I forget his name. In any event, this is what I mean. Like, I'm
Marcus.
Marcus, thank you. Marcus is a nice enough character, but Marcus doesn't, he's not really at this point too interested in being the Monkey Prince. I think he's a little bit traumatized being talked to by a pig, literally a fat pig that has mythological powers. Meanwhile, the Penguin himself, accessed some golden armor, which made the Penguin become possessed. And Marcus's parents, the Shingleshens, who work for the Penguin. They are aware of what's happening to the Penguin, and the Penguin is possessed by these mythological forces, and these mythological forces want the Penguin who's wearing this golden armor to consume the soul of a hero or a saint. And of course, because this mythological creature is merged with the Penguin wants to destroy the soul of Batman. And in the meantime, I want to give the writer Gene Luen Yang some credit here. He does do some character work here. Marcus is we meet Marcus's. He's got a girlfriend, Kea, and there's the school bully here as well that plays a role. There's a lot of character work. In fact, I mean, they're actually in a school. There's this pig character is actually a janitor, and he's clearly he wants to avoid being the Monkey Prince, but it keeps trying to manifest itself on him. And clearly there's something else going on here. There's some other myths or story at play. There's definitely something here that if you're new and you're looking for a new character to get into, this is a good story. I don't want to say it isn't. It's just, it's odd. It feels so different from the mainstream DC universe that I'm accustomed to. I think that, in fairness, I'm not giving this a fair enough shake as I should. But this is well written. There is character work here. It does have humor. I just find myself more kind of shaking my head and everything. But Jane Lin Yang, he knows how to craft interesting characters, and there's a lot of fun to be had here. I'm actually more interested in what the experience of his parents are. There's a great scene where his parents and him are having supper together, and he says, so what happened at work? What happened with you at work today, Mom and Dad? And Mom and Dad, oh, nothing interesting. Well, it's funny, like they're both. It's interesting that both parents, they're supervillains or work for a supervillain, and their son is a superhero. That's a very interesting dynamic that we don't really see. The last time we saw that I even saw anything remotely close to that was in Brian K. Vaughan's Runaways over at Marvel. So this is kind of an interesting twist on that. And because it takes place in Gotham in the same school that Damian's going to, there's a lot of potential here for an ongoing storyline.
Yeah, I mean, at least they're bringing the Penguin in terms of trying to ground it, but it's this obviously different version of the golden horn penguin. He's got this mask on that sort of looks penguin-like, but he's got this giant like rhinoceros horn or unicorn horn coming out of his forehead, which is interesting. So I think you said Japanese. This is Chinese folklore. Monkey Prince.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think pretty sure all the creative team are Chinese. So I agree with you in that if we knew more, if we were of Asian descent, if we knew more about Chinese folklore and the Monkey Prince, maybe we'd be getting more out of this. Because I know nothing about Chinese myths and basically Chinese fairy tales. That's what a lot of this is based on with the Monkey Prince and with this Mr. Zhu, who transforms into this this fat pig for lack of a better word, who's I think a fixture in Chinese folklore as well. So I will say that I think the art by Bernard Chang is fantastic. I absolutely love the look of the Monkey Prince. I think his costumes is fantastic, and he's a fun character. The color work, it's a very bright book, but am I getting everything that's being put out? No, because I just don't have the vocabulary for it, and that's okay. I hope there are a lot of Asian kids from Chinese families who are checking this out and are getting a lot from it because they know the stories that have been passed down from previous generations. At least I hope that's the case. But I sort of feel the same way about you. Like, do I really want to read a story about a kid that turns into a monkey? Because here's the thing, like, it's been talked about many, many times. And I know people personally that are like, man, if you put a monkey on the cover of a comic, if it's, whatever, Kongorilla or what was the one by Arthur Adams? Monkey Man and O'Brien. Like, monkeys sell comics. I remember one summer, the big event was like JL Ape, where all the members of the JLA annuals, they all crossed over, And
Yeah.
I don't know if they were transformed into apes or something like that, but like Batman, but he was an ape, Superman, but he was an ape, Wonder Woman, he's an ape, Green Lantern, all that. I remember it being a big thing and it like selling really, really well. For whatever reason, there's a big crossover between people who like to read comics and people who like to read about monkeys, apparently. But I always thought it was really weird because I don't get that. Like
I don't get it either.
I don't want to read about monkeys. I don't care if there's a monkey in a comic, it makes me want to read it less, not want to read it more.
That's right.
But I know I'm in the minority for whatever reason. People definitely seem to
You
love
and me
monkeys.
both, brother.
Yeah. So yeah, I hope this is scratching an itch for some people. I'll finish it off because it's only 2 more issues. But this isn't something I'd go seek out. It's just, again, not for me. Not that there's anything wrong with it. I think it's scripted very well. It's paced very well. I've already talked about the art, but it's just not really a character that speaks to me. So, well, let's move on. We are up to issue 4 on One Star Squadron, which is written by Mark Russell, which leaves us 2 issues to go. One Downsize Fits All is the name of the issue. Steve Lieber is the artist, Dave Stewart on colors, Dave Sharp on letters. I don't think neither Rocky nor I have really been enjoying this that much. Now we know that Mark Russell can be a very political writer, very satirical writer. And honestly, I think that at least for the first 3 issues of the series, it just felt almost exploitative about kind of the trials and tribulations of these, at best, we'll call them D-list heroes. They're probably a lot further down the alphabet than that. When you're talking about guys like Minutemen and what is it, Red Wolf, or is it Red Wolf or Red Fox, Firehawk. I mean, yeah, these are just not heroes that show up very, very often. But what I will say about this particular issue is probably the issue that I have enjoyed the most of the series so far, because it didn't really feel like it was falling down that same trope that it was making fun of the heroes or really kind of poking fun at the really sad state of affairs that they're in. It didn't feel exploitative at all. It felt more poignant and like a little more of an examination of kind of corporate America, which I think is the point of the series so far. So I enjoyed this issue more than any of the previous ones. I still don't think this is a series that I would go back and reread. But I did appreciate, I think, more so in this issue what Mark Russell is trying to do. I mean, there was even a point here that made me laugh out loud. Basically, when Power Girl, so we thought that Red Tornado himself thought he was going to get fired, and Power Girl has been kind of going behind Red Tornado's back and listening to or doing things that the board of directors has been telling her to do to kind of undermine him. And it turns out, no, they've decided to get out of the hero business. They're trying to sell it. They want to lay off half the workforce so they can make it look more profitable. And she's out the door. And yeah, it was pretty brutal. They're like, make sure to give your key card to Red Tornado before you leave. And I just felt like, oh, damn, like that was brutal. So yeah, maybe a little too close to home for some people who've lost jobs before. But yeah, it felt a little more on the nose with sort of a critique of corporate America rather than making fun of superheroes. But so I did enjoy this issue more than the previous, but it's still really depressing in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So yeah, the other part that made me laugh out loud was when Red Tornado finds out that they've sold it. They found a buyer, and the head of the board of directors is like, yeah, you're someone else's problem now. I mean, it was either find a buyer or burn it down for the insurance money, right? Like, wow, that's brutal. And then, of course, the lawyer in the background saying, I'm legally obligated to point out that was a joke. So, yeah, I mean, again, maybe all a little bit too on the nose. But, yeah, I can appreciate, after reading this issue, I can appreciate a little more what Mark Russell is trying to do. And Steve Lieber is 100% the right artist for a story like this. He brings enough of a cartoonist's aesthetic to it with the right amount of realism. So, yeah, this issue, like, yeah, best issue of the series so far. I'll say that. Anything to add?
Well, I don't, I, for me, it wasn't the best issue of the series so far. I think that was last issue where Minuteman went to the comic convention. That was my favorite because it was just funny.
Oh,
It
where
had
he
humor in
ended
it.
up in Comic-Con jail?
Yeah, Comic Con jail. That was hilarious. Only because I personally have been in Comic Con jail before, so I got a good chuckle out of that. It's not a big deal. In any event, this was just a depressing issue, and it was almost kind of predictable. And sadly, it was everything that I kind of predicted kind of came to pass. Red Tornado doesn't fire. Red Tornado was supposed to fire everybody, or at least half of them. He has to choose, and he doesn't. He's supposed to specifically fire Power Girl. He doesn't. Power Girl finds out he was supposed to fire her. But before she finds out that Red Tornado decides that he doesn't want to fire anybody, Power Girl sort of leaves. Kara leaves, and she goes and she seems to be, I don't know. She's on a she's sort of soul searching, and she's thinking about something. I think she's probably planning something, although it's not clear what she's planning. And perhaps there's a suggestion. Somebody burns it down. Somebody burns down Heroes
Yeah,
for you.
I
At
took
the
it
end.
as Power Girl. I
Yeah,
took it as Power Girl burned it down.
yeah, it suggests that maybe it was Power Girl. That's the implication because but that's definitely not in the character. I don't think that's in the proper character for Power Girl. But you know, frankly, I don't see Power Girl driving a car to work either. She can fly. I know that Power Girl, at least in one incarnation, was a multi-billionaire. She was a billionaire, Karen Starr, and she gave her billions of dollars to the next generation of Power Girl when she went back to Earth 2, but that was pre-death metal. So this obviously isn't a I'm assuming, I don't even know if this is in continuity. I mean, I almost don't even want it to be in continuity because it's so depressing. But in any event, it's clear that it's going somewhere, and this is just Mark Russell's sort of parody or making fun of the corporate powers that be. And at the end, the good guys here are going to get one over these corporate bad guys, and they're going to get their comeuppance. And this issue was depressing. I hope that we have more humor in future issues. Mark Russell can be very funny when he chooses to be, but boy, when he's had some pretty big misses when he misses with the humor. This was just all depression. This issue was depression, and I didn't find any humor in this issue, and that was so it's probably one of my not my favorite issue, but I hope it ends on a higher note, and I think it will. Because God, good Lord, it almost needs to, because there's only one way up. I don't want to, short of, and I have to take a Prozac after I'm done reading this just to get my mood back up. But yeah, we'll see. I mean, how many more issues are left of this? Oh, 2 more issues.
2 more.
All right.
Yeah, 2 more.
We'll see.
All right, now Nice House on the Lake. We already mentioned it. It's returning after the reset button of issue 6, where all the prisoners of the house kind of learned what was going on with Walter being an alien. James Tynion is the writer. Alvaro Martinez Bueno handles the art. Jody Valero on colors and world design on letters. So picking up where that one left off with Walter in the house now, and Nora being the one who's sort of separated. Why somebody always has to be separated, I'm not really sure. I don't know. It's just, I thought it was strange. But yeah, I guess now that Reg is not the one separated and Nora is, it's a little bit of a different dynamic. And Walter, in his own words, says, "Hey." He goes and talks to Nora and says, "Hey, I'm trying something different this time. It's got to work." Well, what's got to work and why? And what about the revelation that Reg had before Walter hit the reset button, that maybe it's not too late to save the world? Like that's kind of what I'm interested in. And I get that Tynan was building to something and then decided to swerve and hit that reset button. But in a way, it feels like it sets the story back in terms of momentum that we've had moving forward. And that's, I don't want to say it's frustrating because it's still a very compelling read. But it does, I mean, this is a big cast. And is this really what you want to be spending real estate on? Us kind of not necessarily going over ground we've already treaded on before, but we had already taken a journey, and now in a way we're placed further back, and now we're going to go on a different journey. I almost wish that we had spent some of that time fleshing out these characters a little bit more, because it's such a huge cast. Like, I feel like I need to go back and reread 3 or 4 times in order to make sure I have a handle on all these different characters. So
Yeah.
it's still a very good read, but it's a challenging read as well. What are your thoughts, Rocky?
Well, the first 6 issues, we were introduced to 10 different characters who ultimately came to know that the person that they grew, one of the persons that they knew very well growing up, this Walter character, was in fact an alien, and he invited them all to this nice house on the lake for the express purpose of saving their lives while the world was destroyed. And they discovered that anything that they wanted, they could write down what they wanted, and it was brought to them. It magically appeared. Whatever they'd want, they'd write it down, and it would appear the next morning. But they, unfortunately, they were caged. They can't leave this nice house on the lake. Meanwhile, the Earth is destroyed, and it was building to a head, like you said, where it was discovered that, look, maybe there's a way that, one of the people there discovered that, well, maybe there's still a way to save the Earth, because there's a group of 10, and there was a suggestion that when the 10 start not getting along, if they don't get along and they fall apart, that's when humanity is going to be destroyed. And so, if maybe there's a way that they can still save the planet. But before they could do that or put together a plan, Walter erased all their memories. And now Walter has a plan, and Walter wants Nora's help at the end of this issue. Well, you got to wonder, why doesn't Walter work with them? Why doesn't Walter let them all keep their memories and tell them what he needs from them? Because why doesn't he just be honest with them and tell them exactly what's going on? Because he can always erase their memories anyway. So I'm a little surprised by Walter's stupidity here. If he can mind wipe them at any time, why doesn't he just straight up be honest with them? And then if they don't do what he asks, then sort of mind wipe them. So I'm a little bit surprised. This was this was almost a wasted issue to me, because all these people have had their minds wiped, except for Nora at the end, where she's kept separate from the rest of them. And so they're always, they're right back to the middle of where they were in issue 3 or 4, where they're writing down what they need. I keep waiting for somebody to wish for themselves to get a tape recorder, or so that they can keep a video journal, so that when their mind's wiped, they can get a video journal and they can watch, they can listen to a recording of themselves to remind themselves of what actually happened. Or maybe that's going to be a future plot point. But I'm thinking to myself, do none of these people keep a diary? What about the writer? Doesn't she check her notes? She can look at her notes, the stuff that she writes down, and in the past few days, to see that, does Walter go and remove all the previous writings that some of them have? What if some of them keep a diary? And anyways, I'm asking, I think I'm still intrigued. I'm very fascinated by this. I feel, but like you, it's like, God damn, it feels like we've gone back 3 or 4 issues. We're starting over again. And this Walter seems to be surprisingly stupid for an alien that sort of planned for Armageddon. So, but
he never, he has powers, no doubt, but he never came across at any point as a very intelligent being to me. Much more interested in emotion than any sort of intelligence. So while he wields great power, and I always assumed that anytime he wipes stuff that, or he hits a reset button, I'll say that it does reset everything. Like, there are no more notes or no more diary. Like, everything is reset to the point, like, hey, house is reset to the moment that they saw the world fall, come to an end on the TV screens. So anything that was written in diaries or whatever, and at least that's what I'm telling myself in my head.
You're probably right.
But I mean, I think we're on the same page here. This is like, is this really the best and again, who are we to question James Tynion? He's an incredible writer, but
Yeah. Yeah.
not knowing the end of the story, not knowing where it's going, I can't help but wonder: is this really the best like use of real estate on the page to reset and go back? And so
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, it's one of the things that it's one of the reasons that I love director's cuts, where I can get the script and or even like some essays from the writer where he says, okay, on this page, here's what I'm doing. And you can learn so much about the characters, because in James Tynion's mind, he may not need to flesh out these characters more because he knows them intimately. But as readers, we don't. And I feel like that's the one thing about this, as much as I'm enjoying this series, the one thing that I wish I understood. Like, I wish they had released during the hiatus. How great would it have been to get like a Who's Who style something released? Could even been digitally.
Yeah.
Here's all the characters, and give me like a Who's Who like entry. Oh, Nora went to high school here, and here's some of the highlights of her life, so that I know her better.
A
You know what I
who's who
mean?
or something. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That would have
Yeah.
been fantastic. A Who's Who. Again, could have even been digital, because I just feel like I don't have a handle. And there's so many characters. Sometimes I have to stop and flip and go back a few pages and like try to figure out, okay, wait, who's this person that's talking here? So maybe that's just on me reading so many comics and having this many characters. It's
No,
hard to keep them
no, I'm
straight.
I'm like you, because there's 10 characters here, and there's a writer, there's an architect, there's the pianist,
Yeah.
there's the there's the doctor, and so I've actually, my original notes from the first issue I've kept, and I look at them every now and then to refresh my memory, because you forget,
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
read a lot of comics.
Yep. Exactly. And a month in between. And this one, it was like 3-4 months in between. So, yeah. Anyway, let's move on. World of Krypton #4, written by Robert Venditti, drawn by Michael Avon Oeming and Nick Filardi on colors, lettered by Hassan Otsman Elhau. Again, Avon Oeming, we've talked about a lot. A little bit of a different style on his art, really working for me for this futuristic Krypton. Um, and the tension has been building. That's one of the things I love about it, as opposed to the previous World of Krypton. It was written by Byrne with Mike Mignola, where 4 issues, and it covered like thousands of years. Between each issue, there was a big time jump. We're getting more of a slow burn from Venditti. It's still covering a period of time, but what's interesting is we knew from the first issue, hey, world's coming to an end. Jor-El's knowledge of the core of the planet becoming unstable. But it's more of a slow burn as they release that information to the general public of Krypton, and what are they going to do about it? And I mean, a lot of parallels with our own, uh, kind of our own world right now, in terms of what people are willing to do for their fellow man and what people aren't willing to do. It's that old sci-fi movie trope, right? Where, or even a comic trope. Look at something like Watchmen, right? Where the whole premise that Ozymandias based his plan on was, if there was a threat, whether you take it from the movie where it was an extra dimensional threat with squid showing up, or you take it from the comic or alien invasion, um, but that if there were a threat that threatened the whole planet, that would be something that would unify humanity, right?
Yeah.
If there's anything the last 2-3 years have told us, man, if the aliens come, you'll have some people that won't believe the aliens are really here. You'll have some
Yep.
people that will try to join the aliens. You'll have some people in the middle. It'll run the gamut. There will be no uniting of the species. That's just not a thing. And so here we have Jor-El and Zod having that sort of philosophical argument. Their houses are two of the great houses of Krypton, and they have a fundamental disagreement with the way to approach this. Zod wants to take a much more hands-on fascist approach, which, I mean, it's hard to argue with based on what we've seen in our own reality. Last couple of years, like, man, if you have to hold everybody down and give them a vaccination, maybe it's for the best in the long run if you want the species to survive, as opposed to Jor-El saying, I have more faith in Kryptonians, they'll do the right thing. Yeah, this is not a debate or an argument that has an answer, and that's what makes it so fascinating. But it's really interesting to see sort of the impetus of the animus between these two great houses. This is the root. This is the seed planted for this animosity where the House of El and the House of Zod become enemies. And again, I thought it was very well done by Robert Venditti, beautifully illustrated by Michael Avon Oming. And I think there's two more issues of this to go, right? It's a 6th issue,
Yeah.
I believe. So yeah, we'll see how it plays out. The other aspect of the issue that we got was Jor-El's brother talking about how he's come to the same conclusions Jor-El has. They've studied things together, but as much as Jor-El has on him, right, like the fate of the planet, he says, he's head of the Science Council. He has the weight of all of this on him, but it still pales. It's still he says all of it is lighter than one little girl, right? The responsibility of every little thing on the planet pressing down on Jor-El is lighter than the responsibility of a parent to their child. But that's all about the change, because at the final panel here we have Laura showing up to say, just visited the doctor and we need to talk. So, I'm sure she's going to say, hey, I'm pregnant. And then Jor-El's going to feel what Zor-El feels, that intense pressure of a parent wanting to save their child. So yeah, these two different approaches on how to save Krypton are very interesting. And seeing Zod consign all the prisoners with no sort of hearing, no like public vote or anything. He's just like, I'm in charge of the Security Council, and we need to save energy on Krypton to try to use all the energy we can to stabilize the core. I'm just gonna, all the prisoners, whether you're in there for a minor offense or a murder or whatever, doesn't matter. Although one of the things about that did strike me is a lot of the versions of Krypton we've seen, the crime is very low. Like it's such an advanced society. What is there to really? You don't really need to steal. They don't have money. You know what I mean? So it was sort of interesting to see how many prisoners there were. You kind of wonder why there's so many prisoners. I mean, even in the Christopher Reeve movie, right? In the Richard Donner, that's why they consigned those 3 prisoners to the Phantom Zone. They were like the only 3 criminals in the history of Krypton. So that did kind of stick out to me, but I'm willing to overlook it. I definitely enjoyed the issue. What do you think, Rock?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's interesting. A couple of things that I think I believe are new additions to the Kryptonian history is that Zor-El actually, you could argue, almost betrays Jor-El, because his brother Zor-El, Kara, Supergirl's father, wants to restart the survival zone. Again. He calls it the survival zone, except it's a form of the Phantom Zone. I mean, the irony here is that Zod's getting rid of all the criminals by putting them into the Phantom Zone, and yet, ironically enough, it's the criminals then, by their very nature, being in the zone, are going to survive the destruction of Krypton. So that's what I always find odd about the stupidest thing. Why didn't Jor-El? They've clearly made the Phantom Zone very horrific, and that Jor-El knows it's horrific, and that it's a terrible experience. But when if you need to save your entire planet, it would seem, why not wait to the last minute, have a massive projection into the Phantom Zone, and then simply have another Phantom Zone projector on another planet, so that you go in and go out right away. That to me would be the most logical thing to do. But I for whatever reason, I think that Robert Venditti here he's crafting a tale here where I think it's very reminiscent of our own world, of the dysfunction of our own world magnified by 1,000, of a dissension and austerity measures necessary to and make sacrifices and what have you. I just want to give a quick shout out. I didn't mention it last issue, Jace, but Robert Venditti wrote that 12-issue Hawkman series, and there was a Kryptonian Hawk person. There was an incarnation of Hawk.
I think it went 28. I think it went 28 issues. It was way more than 12.
12. Yeah, sorry. That's right. It did. And there was a Kryptonian. There was a Hawkman version of who's a Kryptonian, and I believe his last name wasn't it Orm or something? Because I think his descendant. He might have been Z's teacher, who is he might be Kara's history teacher. Last issue. I'm because Robert Venditti wrote Hawkman, and he's also writing this series. So I wonder if we're going to be seeing a descendant or at least one of the incarnations of Hawkman in
His
this
yeah,
series.
his last name was Ol, O-L, Qatar
OL, and I'm
Ol.
wondering, wasn't it
Yeah,
Qatar All? Wasn't Qatar
yeah,
All a Kryptonian in the Hawkman series? I'm wondering if it's the same family on Krypton. Is that
yeah,
was that
yeah.
intentional on the part of Venditti? Anyways, I just put that out there to Tim of Hawk World on Twitter. There, he's a Hawkman fan. So in any
Yeah, it
event,
probably is. And I man, that Kryptonian Hawkman had one of the coolest costumes.
yeah,
Like his shirt was, yeah, it was
it was
fantastic.
pretty
Loved
cool.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but no, I enjoy this. You know, I think it's really nailing down the dissension between Zod and Jor-El. I mean the difference in their approach. I mean that defines the difference. This lays the foundation of the difference between the El and the Zods that goes far beyond the destruction of Krypton, right up to obviously Kal-El and moving forward, and even Legacy, because we know with Zod's son, Larzod, or whatever his son, I think it's Larzod, or anyways, who's actually Zod's son is a member of Suicide Squad, which we'll be reviewing later, and actually makes an appearance in Suicide Squad number 13. But in any event, I enjoyed this, and I have to say, Michael Von Oming's art. I don't know if it's because I criticized it in the opening issue. I think it's getting better every issue. His backgrounds here are, I really enjoy his backgrounds. I think I'm getting into this world of Krypton. I think I'm impressed with it. So I gotta say, like, I'm enjoying this, and it's to the point where it's going to be hard. It's hard for me to imagine. Uh, you know, I'm right in the world that he's created here artistically, and I like his layouts on the designs of his paneling and everything else. And yeah, it works for me. So I'm gonna enjoy this. I might even pick this up as a trade because this is you can tell already this is going to be a nice done in one story. This will make for a nice trade.
yeah, I agree. Okay, up next, first issue of a Batman comic. Do we need more Batman? I don't know, but uh, this one's written by Tom King with art by David Marquez. Colors are by Alejandro Sanchez, letters by Clayton Cowles. It's Batman Killing Time #1. Chapter 1, You Shouldn't Have. I'm very curious your thoughts on this, Rob.
Um, Well, it's Tom King, and so I always. It's a funny thing with Tom King. I know that you and I will give Tom King a fair shot, but I know there's a whole slew of other people online and elsewhere that often do not, and they make sort of judgments about it. I I gotta say, for this opening issue, I'll just bring up the pages here. I think I'm really curious. I mean, it's called. I mean, Tom King's approach to this, just so we're clear, and he said this in interviews, and it bears fruit here. Is he knows he wanted to have one giant. This is a heist movie. This is like a heist, and he wanted it to be one long adrenaline rush of a series, and that's what his purpose was in doing this. And so far, I mean, basically what it is, this is the Riddler, Catwoman, Killer Croc, all getting together to pull off a heist, to steal something from a bank vault, from vault number 5. And we don't know what it is they steal, but it's something massively important, and it belongs to Bruce Wayne, or at least it's hinted that it belongs to Bruce Wayne. And Batman, right away, he knows it's something significant. And this is in the early days of Batman. So this was before Selina was in love with Bruce, or Selina was in love with Catwoman was in love with Batman. This Tom King starts this heist off where this is right from the beginning, where literally the security guard named Nippy, or pardon me, it's not his name, it's the stripper's name, but I think it's the Penguin. The bank security guard is compromised because they pay him off by basically giving him a stripper for girls that he can sleep with, so that they can help pull off the bank heist. And Killer Croc goes into the bank to create the distraction. Meanwhile, they want to rip off this. They want to rip off this Mr. and Mrs. Barrington. So Selina Kyle is undercover giving tennis lessons to Mrs. Barrington. Meanwhile, the Riddler is in the office of Mr. Barrington to distract him. And meanwhile, Killer Croc is in the bank causing that distraction, and all with the goal of pulling off this big heist. Now, what exactly is it that they're stealing? We don't know. That's part of the mystery here. I if there's some criticism here, or first let me give this compliment. The dialogue here is better than it. Sometimes Tom King's dialogue can lose me. His Batman, Catwoman, his dialogue is all over the place, I just can't follow it. And there's 3 different timelines, and it's very messy. Here, I enjoy this. I enjoy this much more. I think this is easier to follow. There's a couple scenes where there's a reference to some of the things to like a pharaoh or some. There's some references to the past here that I'm not quite following, but there's enough here to get me interested. I should also say the Penguin's involved. I forgot to mention the Penguin. So the Penguin, the Riddler, Selina, Killer Croc. These are people are all working together to pull off this heist. And this is in the early days of Batman, and he's going to be chasing them down to get this thing that they stole. And it does a really good job here of enticing the readers to wondering what in the hell did they steal. The art's fantastic. Selina and the Riddler, staring at what it is they stole. It's whet my appetite. I'm really curious. A young Batman dealing with all the younger rogues early in their, probably this is, I can't remember what Tom King said in an interview. Maybe you remember, but I think this is probably year 1 Batman or year 2, maybe. I'm not sure, but
it's year. I think it's a year 2. He said maybe toward the end of year 2.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm in. I'm curious. I think this is easy to follow. It's whet my appetite. I'm curious as to what was stolen, and this is easy to follow. I don't think this is difficult to grasp. There's no significant misdirection. It's actually intriguing. It's easier to follow. It's fast paced. I enjoyed it, and I've been enjoying 99%, 95% of what Tom King's been putting out. Unlike most people, other than Cat, I've been enjoying Tom King, and I got to say, for an opening issue, I'm interested. What about yourself?
I have a couple of nitpicks. Overall, I enjoyed it, especially the art by David Marquez. So yeah, when Tom was on our show, he talked about wanting to do this big over the top thing, heist story, like you said, and just cut loose, have fun. He realized, in hindsight, that telling one story over 100 issues of Batman maybe wasn't the best thing to do, and he kind of regretted not being able to just cut loose and have a big popcorn, big budget movie version of a Batman story. So, he said, yeah, this is going to be straightforward. It's going to be told, one event after the other. And yeah, it's going to be a heist story. So, I mean, if it's a heist story, having a mystery of what's being heisted, that's not necessarily to be unexpected, but maybe it's just one mystery after another at DC that kind of is bugging me. Like, really, here we go again. It's super cliche and super tropey that we keep getting people being shown the item and getting this shocked expression on their face, but we never get to see the item. I could have done without that. You can just tell me what it is. I'll be sufficiently wowed by that. I don't know that you need to keep that a mystery, but again, it's not necessarily, I won't blame Tom for this singular instance of doing that. I don't recall him ever doing that before, but it's just, again, one mystery after another. It can get kind of old after a while. The other thing is, even though Tom told me this was going to be linear, it does jump around in time, but it pays off very quickly. Like, the whole first issue happens in the same day, and sometimes we'll jump back half an hour to see some events that led up to preceding events. So that's not 100%. I think Tom can't help himself. I think he's at this point in his career physically incapable of telling a story that goes directly from A to B to C to D. He'll go from like, here's A1, here's A3, here's A2, here's B1, B2, B3, here's C2, C1, C3. Like, he just has to do it. It's part of his DNA. You just can't go directly in order. But it was, that being said, it was very easy to follow. There are timestamps, and it made a lot of sense. So it's a lot of fun. It's intriguing. I am obviously very curious to know what this item is. Um, I could have done without that, like I said, though. But for me, the um, the art was the thing that was my favorite overall. I mean, I love a good heist story, but kind of how the heist is pulled off by Riddler and Catwoman, it wasn't really complicated or intricate or what have you. So maybe more of that is coming. Um, and I completely didn't understand the jumping back. There is one point where it jumps all the way back to like what is it, 2400 BC or something?
Yeah, I didn't
No.
understand that. That
Yeah,
threw me a little
that
bit. But
that's the one thing that hasn't paid off yet. So, but I don't know. Maybe whoever that woman is, back in the day, maybe it's her earring that they stole, or
who
her
knows? Yeah,
pendant, or something to do with her.
yeah.
And
But
maybe
why would
that's
Batman care though? It's just like it seems to be if it's in Vault 5, and my understanding is that it's something that's important to the Wayne family in Vault number 5. But
yeah,
I
that's
know.
possible. I guess we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah.
Okay, up next, this is probably my least favorite of the week. Arkham City, Order of the World, issue number 6. This is from writer Dan Waters. Danny is the artist, as has been throughout. Let me get to the credits here. Um, yeah, this one was a bit of a struggle for me. Yeah, colors by Dave Stewart. So a bit of car with letters. Man, I just this just wasn't for me. That's just at the end of the day. I get that it's supposed to be moody and creepy and psychological and horror and whatnot, but I haven't liked the art throughout, and I don't think that this art is significantly worse or different in some way aesthetically than it has been throughout the series. But maybe it's just the fact that this is issue 6, and 6 issues of this art is more than I can take, because it really constantly pulled me out of the story. It's just so messy, and so the lines are so thick when there are lines. Sometimes there's not even lines. Sometimes it's just blocks of color that are supposed to indicate a character's pants, for example, or their shirt. It just didn't work for me. And then at the end of the issue, after Dr. Joy gets shot in the stomach, inexplicably protecting the Ten-Eyed Man, um, then it just ends. And I'm left feeling like, why did I? First of all, what did I read, and why did I read it? Because it didn't. There was no payoff. At least for me, that's how it felt. There was no payoff. I didn't. Yeah, I this went over my head, I missed the point completely. Um, yeah, I'll completely take the blame for this one, but not my style of art. Didn't care for the art at all, and I don't understand the story. Don't understand the point of this. So I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I wish I could. I probably could have done a deeper dive into this issue. I didn't quite grasp it either. I will give writer Dan Waters some credit here. The idea of this series, I think, is very interesting. I mean, the idea that you know coming out of Fear State, that the entire city of Gotham is almost like a different section of it, or it's like a map of Arkham Asylum, and that each portion of the city represents a different room, and that essentially Professor Pig is the one that is utilizes this other inmate who sort of imitates and uses her ghost-like form to imitate the Amadeus Arkham, to sort of bring in and pull in all these other desperate former inmate patients of Arkham Asylum, and under and with Dr. Joy being the doctor, basically being the under where Professor Pig is sort of he's Professor Pig is almost like a quasi Amadeus Arkham, and he's got all the inmates now underneath Gotham, and Dr. Joy is the doctor, and he's going to cure them all. And it's a very odd choice of Professor Pig as being. I mean, Professor Pig is usually a straight up psychopath. He kills people, and for him to somehow he's going to cure them, I didn't quite understand that. And Doctor Joy's connection to the Ten-Eyed Man. She wants to help the Ten-Eyed Man, but Dr. Joy herself seemed to be on a journey where she was almost obsessed with helping the Ten-Eyed Man, even going so far as having the Ten-Eyed Man hide out in her apartment for like 4 of the 5 issues, and so that was an interesting plot in terms of the relationship between the doctor and patient. That was very much, it was blurred, and even some of the patients like Dr. Phosphorus and Nocturna, living in an old dilapidated apartment and killing the patients because Dr. Phosphorus was intentionally / unintentionally killing other people in the apartment because he gives off radiation, and all ultimately being pulled toward this Professor Pig in this underground portion of Gotham. I don't like you. I don't really understand what the point of this was or what the end game is here. Azrael is ultimately looking to capture all to bring to recapture all these former Arkham inmates. He ends up becoming captured himself. Professor Pig doesn't kill him. Meanwhile, Dr. Joy herself, I guess they're all end up being essentially sort of prisoners here. I'm not really sure why she doesn't release him. I guess he's a little bit crazy, Azrael. Who knows? She's probably afraid he'll kill her. But I didn't quite really get it. And like you, the ending confused me. So I'm not really sure what the point of all this was. I think it's continuity wise, it's a little wonky with, with other things because we got Arkham Tower going on. But I think we really have to separate these stories. But in any event, I like the art. I never got sick of the art. I enjoyed the art. I think the art's consistent. I think the colors pop off the page. It's really good. I think this Dr. Joy Acosta is an interesting new character. I just think her full potential is likely going to have to be realized in a different story than this one.
Well, she's dead. The impression I got was she's dead at the end.
Well, okay. Fair enough.
Not that that means anything. Not that that means
Okay.
anything in a comic. Yeah, and I mean, she doesn't let Azrael out because she's worried that Azrael's been hunting down these escaped convicts, and she's afraid
She's trying
that
to
if
protect
she
them.
follows, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
She if she follows Professor Pig's, or she knows Professor Pig's about to let him out. That's the whole thing she says throughout the issue. Don't let him out. Don't let him out. Don't let him out. And clearly, the whole idea of Dr. Joy throughout, she's been trying to protect her. She's definitely a dedicated psychiatrist. She's trying to protect her prisoners even to the end. It's a point of her stepping in front of I said inexplicably. I mean, she's trying to protect Ten-Eyed Man like she's done throughout, letting him stay at her apartment, hunting throughout the city for these escaped convicts. It's clear that she cares so much about her patients that she's willing to do anything for them. And that's kind of her tragic story arc, I suppose. And the idea that, Professor Pig has created this new, better version of Arkham Asylum where the prisoners are getting what they really need. And to your point, even Dr. Joy is a prisoner in this funhouse mirror version of Arkham Asylum that Professor Pig has created. And what Dr. Joy needs is to be needed, which is a common trope sometimes in stories. So, yeah, she's allowed to fulfill her role. But she's a new character and we haven't seen her before. And so, I feel like this could have been told in a one shot if you just wanted us to know, hey, there's this new character, Dr. Joy. She works at Arkham Asylum. She cares so much about her patients. She's literally willing to lay down her life for them. And in the end, she does. Why did that take 6 issues?
Yeah. I choose to believe. I think it is an open question whether or not she died. I mean,
Yeah, it's
you could read it
possible.
either way. I mean, I personally hope. I think she's a really interesting character. I mean, to be quite blunt, I really I think she's got a cool look about her with the white streak in her hair. I think she's cool. I actually think she's cool. Anyways, I'd like to see her again. So I hope that DC revives her at some future point or another writer does because I think she's got potential.
Maybe we'll see her at Pennyworth Tower before too long.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, on to the last book we're going to talk about in detail. And then don't forget, we have the separate War for Earth 3 episode. So Static Shock season 1 comes to a conclusion with episode number 6, as it's called, issue number 6, written by Vita Ayala, art by Nicholas Draper Ivy, letters by Ann World Design. I actually don't have a whole lot to say about this issue. It was fun. It was exciting. It was action packed. As far as the art goes, very dynamic from Nicholas Draper Ivy. But I did prefer when he was collaborating on the art with Chris Cross, like in the beginning. It just felt a little more grounded, which isn't, again, to say that the art is bad. Nicholas Draper Ivy going with the digital effects that he does and whatnot, it really works well for the power set that Static Shock has. I mean, there's a couple pages here where Static kind of levels up. He takes the last couple of sugar pills to really get his energy level up, and then he reaches out and melts all the servers that are in this warehouse that have all the information about the Bang Babies. And then in the end, he cuts in on a news feed where they're not necessarily bad mouthing the Bang Babies, but it's clear that the powers that be that control the media and whatnot are giving it that kind of spin. Because when he interrupts, Virgil Hawkins, he uses that exact phrase. He's like, "Yeah, y'all aren't getting the spin this time," and he tells the truth to the citizens of Dakota. Hey, you're calling these Bang Babies thugs, and talking about how we're trying to destroy the city out of anger and whatnot. And he tells it like it is. So I appreciated that Vita Ayala was, giving voice to a lot of the discontent that a lot of urban youth have felt, both in the past and unfortunately still now today, with Black Lives Matter protests and things like that. We all know about the problems with mainstream media, and in this country, it's the fact that these news organizations are or corporate entities that are that exist to make money. That's what they're in the business for. That's a problem in my mind, as opposed to something like the BBC, which is run by the government, which has its own problems. Don't get me wrong, but I don't know. I just feel like news organizations should be forbidden from turning profits, because then you wouldn't have the clickbait kind of stuff or the sensationalism, because it's all about the ratings because you want to be able to make money on it. That's not what news organizations should exist. They shouldn't exist to make money. They should exist to inform and educate the public. So anyway, let me get off my soapbox, because that's neither here nor there for this comic. But ultimately, this was a fun comic. And even in this particular issue, Vita Ayala did a great job. They did something else here, or reminded us of something they did throughout the series, which I've commented on, I think, just about every time we've reviewed it. And that's the fact that they focused on, and I saw them in interviews say this, they specifically wanted Virgil Hawkins not to come from that cliched broken home, with an African-American urban kid who's, father's gone or mother has died, or instead it's a strong familial core. Even he even has a decent relationship with his sister, and in the end, after he finishes helping rescue everybody from these people that were trying to exploit the Bang Babies, when he goes to make his announcement, and he talks to his family about the fact that he's going to do this, they back him up. Virgil even says, he goes, "Yeah, I know it's a risk, because I'm going to be out there, and even though I'm going to be in disguise, but whether I like it or not, I have these powers. It makes me a target. You're my family. That makes you a target." But in the end, they back him up on his decision to do the right thing. And I love that Vita Ayala focused on that. They made that a real central core of the story, and I like that. I like that a lot. So overall, I enjoyed this. I'm looking forward to the second season. What do you think?
The art here just really stands out for me. I love the art in this issue. There were so many different styles of art here. I felt it was just visually, this just was beautiful to page through. And I say that, of course, I'm looking at the digital copy, and we get these preview copies, but the art is really truly fantastic. And I have to say, like, I agree with you on this is a really good message of hope, of channeling all the youthful youthful angst and frustration, with just the powers that be and the way things are. And I think we live in the current times we live in. Often I guess the young can sometimes get a bad rap when they express themselves, civil unrest and, accusations of being maybe too left or too right or fascist this or or whatever, Antifa that I like with this whole thing with the Bang Babies. That and the fallout from that. I think this was done in a very constructive manner. That something constructive came out of that. That these kids that were part of that protest that gained superpowers. That hope at the end of the day, while some of them are villains, most of them are good. And the idea of channeling, taking the anger, channeling the hope, standing for something. That's a really good and powerful message because we got to remember that in this universe of the Milestone universe, this is not in the DC mainstream DC universe. So, and in fact, we know from Icon and Rocket series that Superman did exist in this universe, but he was killed by the enemy of Icon. And in any event, uh, I see Static in many ways being like that symbol of hope that maybe Superman was the stand-in for that. You can argue that it's Icon and Rocket maybe or Hardware, but I like Static. Static to me is sort of like he's like the young Miles Morales or the young Peter Parker, whatever you want to say, because he's right in that wheelhouse. He's a high school student. He's right at he's right at that period of change in his life, and I enjoyed this. I really like these 6 issues it's a good done in one story, not done in one, but I mean, it was 6 issues, but it was a nice story arc and it covers a lot of ground. We even had Hardware make an appearance. We got a good overall history of of who Static is, hints of the Milestone universe, proper, in the scheme of the larger narrative. But between Static, Icon and Rocket and Hardware, this is a really nice ensemble of stories. And in fact, you and I are going to be a little bit of a teaser when we talk about our underrated comics for the year. I think one of the Milestone titles is one of the deserves some honorable mentions for being underrated, because I think that this Milestone line, has not been getting enough attention. It deserves more attention. And I would just encourage people to check out Static. Vita Ayala has done a really good job here. Vita Ayala has I think she gets a lot of unfair criticism about her writing. I think this is one of her better works here. I think she's done a good job on this. And I think she's done a reasonably competent job on Newbie and the Amazons with her collaboration with Stephanie Williams. I have some shortcomings with regard to that. But for the most part, Vita Ayala I think she's an up-and-coming writer, and I hope DC continues to give her more work.
Yeah, don't forget they. Uh, I know you always fall into that.
Yeah,
That
I used
track.
the wrong
Yeah,
pronoun, right?
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
I apologize
Okay,
to
well that's
Vita
gonna.
again.
Yeah, yeah. So that's gonna do it for this episode, everybody. Don't forget to go check out the War for Earth 3 Spotlight, where we talk about the first issue of that series as well as Suicide Squad number 13. In addition to the books that we talked about, we do have a couple of collections coming out from DC today. That Dark Knights of Steel, I guess that's a collection, sort of. Dark Knights of Steel, Gathering of the Storm, number 1. It's like 70 pages, 68 pages or something. It collects the first 3 issues. Also, Nice House on the Lake, Volume 1 trade paperback. So just in time for the series to return. If you haven't read any of it, you can pick up the trade with the first 6 issues and then pick up the single for issue 7. Also, Harley Quinn and the Birds of Prey, The Hunt for Harley, which is an out of continuity story, Black Label, from Amanda Connor and Jimmy Palmiotti. So if you're a big fan of their run, they get to go even more raunchy and more dirty with their writing style. So that trade, I think that was originally, I want to say 4 issues. The trade's 160 pages, so that's out this week as well. So yeah, and then upcoming, have some interviews coming for you guys. Kelly Thompson's going to be on the show soon. J.H. Williams. I'm working on some other big names to come on. And yeah, the big thing coming up, like Rocky mentioned, and I mentioned at the top of the show, finally getting our best of 2021 episode out the door. Really excited to talk about it. I fell down the rabbit hole this last weekend, going over my picks, changed a few. But just, yeah, man, last year was actually a really good year for comics. So looking forward to that. Anything you want to tease the people with, Rocky, before we sign off?
Uh, Well, I've got a number of things in the go, but it's going to be a couple weeks before I get to them. But I'm looking forward to my favorite comic book of the week is War for Earth 3, and followed by Suicide Squad 13, which we're going to be reviewing after this in a separate podcast and a separate YouTube video. So I'm actually looking forward to that.
Yep, fantastic. Well, that's going to do it, everybody. We appreciate the support as always. Don't forget to head over to Rocky's YouTube channel, Comic Space Boom ! Subscribe to the channel, ring the notification bell so you know when new content comes out. Like this video. And if you guys check us out on YouTube, when we do these spotlights, you can see the art, you can see the stuff as we're talking about it. If you check us out on YouTube and you've never gone and subscribed to the Comic Source, really appreciate if you do that as well so you don't miss any of our audio only content. Just go to your favorite podcasting application on your smart device or your favorite podcasting platform, Google, Stitcher, whatever it might be, and just do a search for the Comic Source and subscribe. And the other thing I'll mention, everybody's got an Amazon Alexa these days, right? Like you can just say, Alexa, play the Comic Source, and she'll play you the latest episode.
That's cool.
So yeah, it is really cool. So anyway, that's going to do it for this episode, everybody. Don't forget to check out the War for Earth 3 Spotlight as well today, and we will talk to you next time.
See you later.